Thank you for joining this session. I'm going to talk about peer assessment and peer instruction and how they can be used to create change-oriented learning. And in the session today, I'm not just going to talk about how it works. I'm also going to show you how you can do it yourself. That's something I value a lot. Let's see if I can get this one to work. Worked just before. I just go here. Yeah, my name is Henrik. I do instructional design and also some advice and some lectures about MOOCs and also e-learning in general. My main interest is social learning and also how you can use that to create change-oriented learning. For me, it's really important to create online learning that leads to change, so not just people knowing more, but actually also being able to do something better than they used to do before. Yes, in this presentation, I would like to introduce you to a case about peer assessment, and then I will tell you about some challenges in this case, and also some challenges in corporate education in general. And after that, I will present you with some results, and then the process on how this was created, and how you can also use some of these tools to create peer assessment and peer instruction on your own. Oh, I'll just go one step back. Yeah. So the case I want to introduce you to is not about corporate education, but you can draw a lot of the designing principles from this case into corporate education. And I have my daily day in corporate education, so that's why I want to take out this case and draw this, because there's a lot of similarities that can be really beneficial. I have created a MOOC in cooperation with a Danish NGO. It's called Fair Start Foundation. They are doing education of caregivers around the world, mainly in third world countries. We created a MOOC that's implemented in 9 countries right now, using the edX, open edX platform, and having a main focus on peer assessment. The challenges when we were going to create this course was that it was not enough just for these caregivers to know more. We had to make them be able to act in different ways and to be able to apply theory into practice. And how could that be done online? That was our biggest challenge. To tell you a real life story, the caregivers, they have been to, the instructors of this NGO, they've been to a lot of different countries, and in some countries they have experienced caregivers slapping children if they were crying or locking them into rooms in order to make them behave. So that was the way that they acted towards children. So it wasn't enough just to tell them and present them with theory that you should do differently. What we needed to do was to make them act in a different way and have them to change their meanings, habits and views on the way they worked. And as for the caregivers, this also goes for corporate education with the professionals. There's a lot of professionals that comes from one business to the other, and they need to learn how to work in different ways. That also requires change of work habits and also the meanings towards theory. And I just summarized some of the challenges in corporate education. Anand also highlighted these challenges earlier today. But the workforce is changing, also with the Generation Y. The corporate businesses has to provide education that will have the employees to change and adapt to new ways of working, and that happens every day, also with new technology coming, and also with a focus on lifelong learning. I have experienced 2 challenges creating MOOCs in corporate education, with peer assessment and with peer instruction. As for peer assessment, as I see it, it's a really great tool to create reflection and to be used for social learning. But a challenge is that it is synchronous, that you have to, there's a due date and you have to do the peer assessment before a certain date and so on. And that can be a challenge for some people, especially professionals. And that's why I was really happy when I first was introduced to peer instruction. It is not the same as peer assessment, of course, but I would like to show a proposal on how you can also use that tool to instigate change in MOOCs and in learning. Just to sum up the results from this caregiver education, they were like pretty good results. The children were like, they had a lot better life after the caregivers were educated in this like a caregiver education, and the caregivers were also more proud and satisfied on the job and had a better relationship with the children. And then something that I was really proud about contributing to was to make them have theory to be a part of the practice and change the way they work. So the process of creating this caregiver education, this online education, like from day one, we had a focus on involving the learners. We didn't just want them to know more. We wanted to involve them and to make them have some experience on how the new tools and theory could be used in practice. And that is going away from this picture. I'm from Denmark, and this is a Danish picture from the pedagogy in the 70s. It says like knowledge and skills, and with people believing that it could be transferred from into the heads of students. I really like this picture. So we didn't want to create a MOOC that was like this, with information, quizzes, information, quizzes. What we wanted to do instead was to go and stimulate different parts of the brain. This is from Culps learning theory. Knowing that different people learn in different ways. So some people, they learn more by like testing, like a carpenter, like a carpenter education. They have a lot of like practice experiments, where like a lawyer, that's more like theory and stuff like that. So basically, we acknowledge that people learn in different ways, but all people, they learn a little bit in one of these parts. So if we could create an online education where we had the learners to stimulate all the different parts of the brain, then we thought that it would be a success. And just to sum up, like 4 main areas of the brain, like one is stimulated when you get information, one when you use this information or tools like in practice, when you get some experience, and then also when you reflect upon what happened, and then more abstract reflection about how can you improve in the future next time you go and apply this tool into practice. So the way we try to like make this for a process, like a development process as an instructional designer, was to use the 70-20-10 approach. I don't know if any of you know about this approach. Any hands? Some. I'm glad to see. Yeah, with like 10% of a training experience coming through content, like information. There could be videos in a MOOC, or like reading a PDF. 20% on group work, group project work, discussing with colleagues or discussing with peers. And then 70% of the learning experience on the job, with the learners applying the tools and theory into practice, getting real hands-on experience. So the way we created this MOOC was to like mix a little around, and we started with presenting the learners with some content, with some information, some tools and theory and stuff like that. We did this module over 8 weeks, so each week they were presented with some new information and some content and some tools. And it was really important for us to not have the tools to be abstract, so we spent a great time on also like showing how to use these tools as a part of the information. But I will come back to that in a moment. As a part of the learning experience, we had them to go out to the orphanage and to apply this theory into practice and to get some real hands-on experience. So they had the information, they had the tools, and then they were about to go and try to see how these tools worked in real life. And to stimulate reflection, we used peer assessment with some questions stimulating reflection as well as critical reflection. A lot of the learning theory that I have read, also like new neuropedagogical research, indicates that reflection is a vital part of a learning experience if you want new knowledge to stick, but also new knowledge to be a part of your new way of acting as a part of your behavior. So we had like a great focus on the group work project, and that's where peer assessment comes in. When we created like the information, like the MOOC, the videos, and also some of the exercises, we had a focus on making it problem-centered, so it was like tangible for the students, for learners. So we used like problem-centered learning, and then we also tried to make it authentic with the interviews, trying to promote a why, and there was interviews with some of like the children, what it meant to them to have proper care. And some of the children told, like, we have some videos from Indonesia with some children that lost their parents during the tsunami, and like the children started crying on the on the video shoots, and that was interesting to have as a part of the training, because it made, like, it touched the learners. It made them really want to help these children that were like, not these children, they're like a bit older. And then we also have interview with staff who went through previous training sessions to see what it meant for them to have this training. We also had demonstration of the tools and the information that they were told about. So if they were told about a certain theory, then they were also like shown how to use this in practice. So they could like observe a real situation, a real like real life case of how to do it. And we had a focus on having them to learn by doing, like to applicate the new theory and tools in practice, and also on the reflection that is the peer assessment. To create peer assessment, we looked into Patricia Cranton. She has a framework for reflection. I'm not like showing it here, but I just want to highlight that she has reflection on content, process, and premise that they can be used for different meaning perspectives. I can recommend reading into Messerov and Habermas and also Cranton if you want to know more about different meaning perspectives. There can be social meaning perspectives, and about content, and there are like 6 different, as I remember. So what we wanted to do when we created our peer assessment was for the students to reflect upon what happened, how did it go when you like tried to apply this new theory into practice, and then for the critical reflection part, which is really important, why did it happen as it happened, and why is it important for you to know about this theory, tool, and stuff like that. Most training courses, and also MOOCs as I see it, have a lot of what questions. What is, what. Some have like a little how, but not that many have this why part as well as a part of the course. And according to learning theory, for Messerov and Habermas, it's really, really important to have the reflection about the why if you want people to change the meanings, the habits, and the views. They have to reflect about why is this important for me, why am I doing as I am, and why should I change the way I am doing this right now. The why is of crucial importance. This is some screenshots from the caregiver education. I've just taken a few of them just to show how we have used this framework for reflection and created it into 2 questions. So before they were presented with these questions, they had like some videos, some tools as the 10%. Then they also had some time to go out and try these tools in real life. And then after that, they were presented with these questions in the peer assessment. One of the questions is a topic to encourage openness and dialogues, and the task here was that they should share experiences about the dialogues with the caregivers and how it was helpful for them. And the question here, like the first one, was what did you do to encourage openness in your dialogues with the caregivers. So this like made them reflect upon the situation. It made it like less abstract. We make a base that we can use for the reflection. After that, the question was, how can openness in dialogues affect your cooperation with the caregivers? Now they had to like describe how it went and what happened and stuff like that. This is also really important to stimulate reflection. When they have to explain how they did, they like start reflecting, learning start happening. And then the reflection about the premise. Why is the sharing of early experiences of separations important for creating professional openness and dialogue in the group? So now they had to like go into the critical reflection and go like a little deeper, as I would say, and go and reflect upon the meanings, habits, and views. So this is basically how we created the peer assessment as the part of as a part of the end of each week. I just like to another example. I'll just go through it really quickly. What tasks and activities did the caregivers do between session 2 and session 3? So they have like to describe the context again. How did the children react to the new ways of doing things? Again, describing what happened, how it was done, which makes them reflect, which leads to learning. And then also why why do we think the children's behavior changed or not changed when the caregivers tried the new activities? So again, a focus on the why, creating a context that can be used when we ask this why question. If we just started out with why do we think, it could be it was difficult for some of them to reflect upon this. It could be a bit too abstract, and that's why we also have the what and the how questions. As for the peer instruction, that is used in a different situation, and that doesn't have to do that doesn't belong to the caregiver education. That has to do with a retail MOOC for retail education for salespersons working in stores selling clothes. On a platform hosted by Mooget. Ivan is sitting right there. So, hey Ivan. Where like these retail personnel, they do not have the time or like motivation to do peer assessments. They want to be presented with content really rapidly and then also like do a quiz after that. They're used to multiple choice quizzes, but as we want them to reflect a little bit deeper, we looked into peer instruction and how that could be used for this purpose. For the peer instruction, we also used the what, how, and why questions. And I just want to show you an example. This is an example of a guy entering a store. That's like the picture's a bit longer, and then there's also a narrative telling a story about this guy. And then the personnel, or like the workers, they're asked to explain what action they would do towards this consumer. So it's not just like A, B, or C, like there's a little more into it, there's a narrative, and they have to finish the situation, the sales situations. And after they like choose which, in this case, which model they would choose for this customer, they also have to explain why they want to choose this. It could be like it had like, different features, and then we force them to like write, or not like force, we inspire them to, I would rather say it like that. We inspire them to make a great effort into explaining why this special, in this case, pair of jeans is good for like this type of person. And then we also inspire them by showing them what other students has written, and that makes them reflect again, like and see, okay, maybe I was a bit wrong, so this could be like the real answer, and I will just refine my answer to make this when I finish the quiz. I'm not going into the design of peer instruction. I hope that most of you know about it. Like when you're attending the Open edX conference, it's really powerful and there's a lot of potential. I have an article explaining it on my LinkedIn. Feel free to read that. But as I see it, it's one of the biggest things that has happened to edX in a long time, like at least from an instructional designer's point of view. Because reflection can be stimulated in a way that works asynchronous. That there's no due date, you can go whenever you want to do this quiz. And instead of just being a simple multiple choice quiz, we have the learners to go and write and reflect and like kind of active learning process. Also, according to the learning theorist Knud Ilris, he's a Dane. He's very fond of Mesirow as well. Maybe that's where I have it from. But according to him, reflection is like you get a deeper level of reflection, and also reflection that's make knowledge stick in a better way if you do written reflection instead of oral reflection. And that's just the last point I want to tell you from this presentation, that written reflection, if you ask me, that's a really powerful tool. And the reason why I have chosen to work with edX is because of peer assessment in the start, and now definitely also peer instruction. I see it as two really, really powerful tools to implement this 20% of the 70-20-10 approach. And I think the last slide is, questions. Yes, please.
I have seen the peer instruction process.
Yeah.
Never used it really. Okay. I work on a business school.
Yeah.
So we work a lot about having people to reflect about specific cases. But maybe I'm wrong, but I think that the problem with that tool is that at the end it tells you this is the correct answer. Because that is a no-no for us, because there is never a correct answer at the end. It's just, I mean, how do you close the experience? Okay, everybody says what they think, they correct their voting, and how do you close it?
There is like, it is as works as multiple choice in like a kind of way. There is a correct answer. You cannot go around that.
There is a correct
There is a correct answer at the end, but
there's a new version of it, so you can opt out of having a correct answer. Yeah. So I'm Derek White from UBC. So we developed the thing. So the later version, which is now in well, it's at least. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's I'm not sure which version it's actually packaged with, but it's certainly the latest version. You don't have to have a correct answer. So we're trying to support exactly that use case, right?
Thanks. I saw that in the peer assessment questions, the questions were quite open, and I was wondering, how do people assess a question like, what was your opinion of something like that? How does the assessment go?
Really great question. So like, how the peers assess each other? Yeah. The categories like we choose to use for like assess each other was for people to vote if they were like on the right track or not. So we had them to say, is he like very much on track, or just like on track, or like not that much on track. Like we had like 5 different options, and then we had them to explain why they believed that they were not on the right track, or why they were on the right track, and how they like could improve. So we had them to not like judge each other or like assess, but more like, yeah, I believe you're on the right track, and this is why. Or like, yeah, I think like we're interesting to see more of this. So that's how we used it.
But do like students get points in the course for that, or?
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Depending on they're on the right track or not. But we choose not to have 0 points. Or we choose to have like from 2 points and up. So you could only like inspire that way. Yeah. Anybody here that uses peer assessment? Excellent. Yeah. A question? Yeah, please.
In your feature, have you ever thought of doing like TA grading or TA assessments versus just peer? Like
only peer assessment.
Okay. Have you ever tried to do like have you looked into doing like TA based assessments or no?
No.
Okay.
Not yet. Yeah.
Okay.
Pardon?
There is a related issue to this. We also have tried peer assessment, We had, of course, mixed experience, because when we have large number of students in a course, some students don't take peer assessment seriously at all, and they do a shoddy job.
Yeah.
But more importantly, we have not yet figured out how effective that peer assessment has been as a contributor to learning. As a contributor to assessment, of course, we get some marks and grades which are reflective, and we have correlated them with the marks that they obtain in other assessments. So there is a good correlation. But how much the peer assessment has contributed to learning, we have been unable to measure any kind, anyway.
We have made like some survey about the peer assessments. 14 different questions regarding peer assessment. I don't have them as a part of this presentation. But it showed that the learners, they were really fond of peer assessment, and it really helped them to proceed their training and to learn the new things. If you write me an email, I will feel like I can share the data with you if you want it. To your second question about the reliability of peer assessment, about if you can use the scores. We use the peer assessment mainly for learning purposes and not for test purposes. So we use it for formative assessment. But I have done a review of articles, peer-reviewed articles on peer assessment that indicates that peer assessment can be used for reliable assessment.
We found only one correlation positively. Out of some 4,000 teachers who participated in a teachers training program, as I said, some people took peer assessment seriously and some others did not. What we did is found out the correlation between the score of the people who have participated vigorously in peer assessment and their score in other assessment, and there was a very high correlation, which tells me that somehow if you can increase the engagement with the participants, that means you can somehow encourage them to spend more time, I think effective learning would happen.
I totally agree. One question here.
Kind of two. Have you ever tried using peer assessment in an asynchronous fashion? Actually, I'll just leave it at that for now.
No, I haven't tried to use it asynchronously.
Yeah. Some of our instructors have wanted to have these be courses that are self-paced, that people can go in at their own time, and so they've set them up with you can have it open until 2030 or whenever. And it kind of works. The students go in, they do the work. Sometimes there are other people there at the same time. Sometimes there aren't, so people are waiting. Have you done any studies into how learners feel about that? It's, on the support end, people aren't necessarily very happy with it, but at the same time, they're still getting some engagement, even if they're waiting a long time. So I'm just wondering if there's any research on that yet.
I haven't run into any research, and I'm really curious about the question as well.
Okay.
But unfortunately, no, I haven't read any research about it.
Okay.
And that's why I think peer instruction was so great when I first got introduced. It's not the same, but you can.
It's another option. Which is great.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
I have. Okay. Second, just for clarification, were you on the kickoff keynote with the CEO of edX?
Pardon?
I mean, on the first presentation from the CEO of edX, he mentioned two tools, right? He said, we're very proud of the peer grading tool, I think. And then he said the peer learning tool, which is great for cases. I think he was referring to this, right? Or there is another tool?
I think he meant this one, peer assessment.
I think it was peer assessment, no?
Yeah.
Okay. Peer instruction, no? Yeah, okay. That's it.
Have you looked into gamification to increase peer instructions, such as star contributor or some kind of rating from the like how many people, like in the Amazon, for example, how many people have found this command useful, that kind of thing? Would that encourage, like, to give non-shoddy instructions, basically?
We haven't tried to like use gamification. We, as the instructions designers, had a proposal to highlight the top 5 peer assessment providers. Like in the peer assessment, you can like highlight the top 5 scores, the top 3 scores. But the NGO with whom we worked declined that proposal. Like they didn't want to use it because they didn't want to like make a difference between the learners. So I haven't tried it, but just for as a note, I know it's possible to like highlight the top contributors when you work with peer assessment.
Like, I believe that if they were, from student perspective as well, if they were like the star contributor or the one of the top contributors for a class, it would be interesting for them as well. Like to give that, to have that kind of a credit, extra credit.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like so they can like feel like their own progress and they can see like they're one of the top contributors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you think of other engagement tools that it would? Been trying to think of other ways that edX can make the platform more engaging. It's kind of a hard area to think about when it doesn't exist. So since you use it so fully, are there other areas that you could see edX going in that you wish they would go in?
Like new ways to do stuff, like new developments?
Like peer assessment, like peer instruction, other ways where participants have more interaction with each other in an integrated environment.
I think it could be interesting to see how you can make like the peer assessment tool like asynchronous, as we just talked about before. But how it can be done, I'm not sure how it can be done, but it could be really interesting. Also, I think if it's one day possible to upload a thesis or document or something like an assignment, and then to have it assessed by like a machine and not a real person. I think that could be interesting. As there are like different apps also for learning a language, like Duolingo. I think that's one of the most famous, where you can like auto-correct what you write and like see if it's the right way you do it and so on. I think it could be interesting if there's a tool like that in edX, so you can upload an assignment and then not having like to like depend on a person or like a staff, but just having it created from an algorithm.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, please.
I'm very interested in this. So, last question. Well, as I said, I work on a business school, okay, and we are all about social learning and learning from each other. When I use these tools, I get a lot of people saying, "Why is it anonymous? Why I can't put the name of the person so that they know who they are talking to?" Do you have any strong position about it? Like, it doesn't work if it's not anonymous, or it has to be anonymous for it to work?
I think like from a business school perspective, it could be really interesting like that people show who they are when they write and when they assess each other. In my view, it also makes it more like real, and like you are like if you don't like do a proper assessment, it will get back to you. Like, and I think it could work well if like you know what you contribute, people know that it's you, and you really have to go do a good effort when you contribute. But in edX, in peer assessment, you can choose whether or not to post anonymously or not. But for the peer instruction, I think it's only anonymously. Okay. But perhaps like I don't know if it's gonna be like not anonymously in the future.
It is one of the. There's a feature we've discussed different ways of actually increasing the engagement. So, for example, the ability for somebody to actually respond to the comments. The second stage is where you actually see other people's responses, and we've
talked about the possibility of then having a sort of a third way of actually then having a response to those responses and feedback that loop. We haven't talked overtly about it being, whether it's anonymous or not. We did sort of consider some of those things. We've got, anybody who's interested in seeing the development of this, we've got a list of things that we are thinking of developing, so we'd be interested in your feedback.
Great.
I think that was it for the questions. Yeah. Yes. Thank you very much for attending this.